Ready?
I guess.
Well, hello there. Welcome back to Podcasting Behind the Why. Last time we talked, Ryan had a chance to turn the tables on me, so now turnabout's fair play. So I want to talk to Ryan and introduce you to him as we talk. You hear his voice on the podcast. He's my fact checker and keeps me honest. But let's talk to Ryan about how he got to where he is. Because when I first met you, you were in the military.
Yep.
And one of my adoptive daughters came to me and told me she met this guy. And I'm like, what? So I wasn't very happy about the idea of Ryan when I first heard about you because I didn't know you. I'm like, who's this trying to catch up room on my daughter? And so as I met him, I remember meeting you the first time and seeing the way you handled her, and it made my heart relax because I saw that you treasured her. And that made me comfortable with the idea of you. I still had to get to the point where I liked you. But I got to
Still working on that?
No, you're not helping, But all that being said and done, I see that God has put the right people together. He's a wonderful God, and he puts the personality he needs together. And you come together in marriage, and you realize that when God puts you together, it's not because he's trying to make you happy. He's trying to make you perfect. And that takes sandpaper. And so we rub each other. I've been rubbing my wife for the last 36 years, and she's been rubbing me, and I'm hopefully getting a little smoother. We'll see. But let's talk about Ryan today. So when again, after the military, was quasi-military, wasn't real military because you were Army, right? So he wasn't a Marine, so we won't hold that against him, though. But I remember you'd gone to, was it Afghanistan?
Yep.
Afghanistan. So
yep, I was over there for a year.
Now, what I want to do, just to give a little backdrop, since we caught people up to I know who you are now and all those kind of things, and you've met my girl. You're in Afghanistan. Let's talk about Ryan in Afghanistan, and what part did you see the Lord playing in that?
Oh man, Afghanistan sucked.
No, really, tell me how you feel.
Yeah, it was difficult. At the time we didn't have children, which was good. That would have made it a lot more difficult. Mm-hmm. Being away from Amber was hard enough.
Right.
But it was a good opportunity for me to just let go and depend more on him. But at the same time, like I don't think I let that happen as much as I should have. I think I guess it's not just me, probably a lot of people, the thing we struggle with is relying on ourselves versus relying on God. And that's, I think the constant struggle I find in myself, just because, personality, that's nature, that I think that's the nature of sin.
Romans 3:23.
Selfishness.
Right? All have sinned and come short of the glory of God. We all got that selfish root. So yeah.
But there's a lot. Okay. So I would say about 70% of my time in Afghanistan was spent, on a FOB or an outpost or somewhere like that.
For those who don't know, define FOB.
Okay. So, so there was basically 3 different size bases that I was on. One, when I got there, I was at Kandahar Airfield, and my brother actually was there. He was there first push into Afghanistan. Oh, he was there back in early 2000. I can't remember if he either went end of 2001 or early 2002, right after 9/11 and all that stuff happened. He was at Kandahar Airfield, and back then it was nothing. Like it was the first push in there. Well, fast forward, I was there in 2000. I got there in 2009, and it's a city. I mean, it's a city. It basically in Afghanistan, like there's 2 major areas: Kandahar Airfield in the south, and I'm totally blanking on a big one in the north. And it's where all of the like allied forces, if you want, I can't remember what we called it.
It's a westernized footprint in the Eastern world.
Yeah, I mean, you'd see the Canadians, British, everybody that was there to fight against whoever we were fighting. They were there at Kandahar. Anyway, so we get there, and it's basically this city. And then from there, I went to a FOB, a forward operating base.
Okay.
And that is basically like a battalion-sized place. So much smaller, but at the same time, still fairly built up. We got pretty good food there. I mean, for being in Afghanistan, we got amazing food, let's be honest. And then from there, I went to a combat outpost, so battalion, I don't even know sizes, but it's quite a few people. Then from there, I went to an outpost, and that's a company size, and that's, maybe a couple hundred people.
Right.
But again, still pretty built up. We're right next to a local village, which was pretty cool. That was actually probably my favorite time in Afghanistan, was at that specific outpost.
Okay.
But the nature of my job, we were supposed to have people we'd talk to in Afghanistan, and we try to get information from them.
So you were a spy.
Hey, yes, I was a spy. I was James Bond. No. I mean, literally, like, we would just talk to people. That was it. And so, like I said, 70% of the time, I just me specifically, the places I ended up, probably 70% of the time I would stay on base.
Right.
And then 30% of the time, just the places I would go, I would end up going out on missions, basically like with the infantry or cavalry guys, and we'd walk around, and my goal was to try to find people to talk to. But anyway, it was so vastly different from what I think most people think of as war.
Okay.
On the different times I went out on missions, and we're going through these villages and stuff. Personally, we came under fire like one time. For me, that was it, one time. Now, don't get me wrong. There's other people who went to Afghanistan. A buddy that I worked with at the jail, they were getting in daily firefights. So, a lot of it depended on where you were, and he was a Marine. But not to say that, even people that we went over with, they suffered a lot of casualties and stuff. So it just varied. But needless to say, when you think about going to war, I didn't go through a lot of hardship.
Okay.
A strange thing too, if you think about it, me being in Afghanistan, we had internet like everywhere.
Oh, I do remember that.
Yeah, and so I was talking daily with Amber.
I remember telling her to shut up. She was whining to me about you being gone. And I said, no, stop. I said, when I was overseas, I had a pen and paper.
Exactly.
And it took a week to get a letter. I said, I don't want to hear about you going. I got to wait till the night to see him.
Well, yeah, even like my brother, he was over there early. We were lucky if we'd get a phone call from him once in a great while, and it was primarily letters. And so, the mechanism of war is so strange and different with technology today.
Okay, with all that going on, with all that up and down and boom and smack and training and fobs and command posts and moving and talking to trying to spy on people and learn their secrets. Where was Ryan spiritually in all that?
The whole time I think I was in the Army. So I grew up in the church, gave my life to the Lord at a young age. And, I think, I don't know that I really, I feel like I'm still learning. Of course, we're all learning, but.
You better be.
Yeah. No, I know everything. But, we were talking in the last podcast about the relationship with Jesus Christ being the most important thing as a Christian. That's what it is.
That's it. Yeah.
And I think even up through junior high and high school and then college and then going into the military, I've been a very slow learner. And unfortunately, being in the Army, I don't think I think I actually probably drifted away from Christ more than I clung to him. So, all that being said, I was talking about being self-reliant and stuff. So in Afghanistan, I just felt like I just continued to drift, honestly. And more recently in the last, I don't know, 5-ish years, maybe, I think I've really started to understand
life.
Yeah. And that's a good thing that I feel like I've continued to grow And
so then you come back here to the States. I know you guys moved out of state for a while, and you came back here to the Valley, and you get out of the Army.
Ah, yes, wonderful day.
And and then you join a local law enforcement over here in Canyon County, and you're working. Was it three and a half
about
years?
3 years? Yep.
And in the middle of all that, you're starting to get involved in this world of videos and YouTube and everything else. So tell me how that began for you.
Well, so I went to college actually for film. Like I went to film school basically.
Okay.
At a local school, and so going to college was basically expected. So like I graduated high school. And like, oh, what am I going to do now? Well, I'm going to go to the local school. Same one my sister went to. Like, I just kind of let it happen. You know what I mean? I don't know if that makes sense. It's just like, okay, that's what I'm going to do. So I'm there, and it's like
culturally expected.
Yeah. So like, what am I going to major in? I don't know. Like, I'm 18 years old. I don't know what I want to do with my life.
Right.
So I started out graphic design.
Okay.
But I just wasn't. It just didn't, I wasn't that good at like drawing and stuff, and it just didn't. So I'm like, okay, I don't know. Let's just switch to like liberal studies until I figure out, I can just get some of my general education. Anyway, so it goes on, and my buddy and I are like, we're just making these silly videos and stuff, and I'm like, you know what? I like filming. Like I could do this. So I go check out the film school, and so basically my last 2 years is when I did the film stuff. And love it. Like I really enjoy everything about it. I feel like God's given me a passion for it and given me, giftings in it. And so fast forward, after college, join the Army, go away from that, blah, blah, blah. So I'm working at the jail, and my wife's brother, Aaron, is doing YouTube videos. And
I remember when he first started doing those, it was like the craziest thing. Was the Kiss video or something he was doing?
Yeah, he was doing like these prank videos. Well, prank videos, they had their time on YouTube.
Yeah.
They don't do as well anymore. But so he was doing that kind of thing. And then he stumbled across these superhero videos, and it just took off for him. And I'm like, wait a minute. So I'm here working at the jail, been there for about 3 years, 2.5 years at the time. And it's just getting old. There's a lot of stuff. Working in a jail is a tough, is a tough job. I mean, mentally exhausting every single day. Basically, I think for like 8 years, I was in a job where you're trained to, look over your shoulder, watch your back. You're always on alert. And that's just, it's a mentally and physically exhausting thing. So he's starting to do these videos, and I love video, but for like 8 years, I feel like my creativity has just been like nothing, like the Army and working in the jail were not conducive to creativity. Like I would work nights, and I'm like, okay, I love writing. So I'm like, okay, nights, everybody's asleep. I'd get on the computer and I'd be like, I got nothing. And so anyway, so I'm like, you know what? He's doing these videos. Why don't I give it a shot? So we started, and they took off. Eventually the superhero stuff got nixed, but we're doing better stuff now anyway. I think God has definitely led us. Okay, so interesting story about God, God's hand being in everything. So working at the jail, getting tired of it, wanted to move to a different agency. So I put my application in, everything's going well.
I remember that.
Yeah, I'm in the background section. They're doing the background stuff, everything. And all of a sudden I get a call from the guy conducting the background, and he's like, I recommended you don't move forward in the process, and they've agreed. And so for now, and I'm like, what?
I remember that shock.
So the first day, initially I'm like, it's a blow to your pride is what it is. It's like, oh, I'm not good enough, whatever. But, I got to the point, I'm like, you know what, God, it's in your hands. I trust you. And so honestly, like next day I'm like, okay, it is what it is. Like, God's got a plan. It's in his hands. Well, then you go a couple months forward, and I start doing the YouTube thing. And then just, a couple months after that, I'm able to quit and do YouTube full time. And I'm like, God knew. Mm-hmm. God knew.
And I asked you that question because as we sit here today, we were talking earlier off camera about the parable of the servant and the talents, and how when Jesus tells the story that the kingdom of God is like a master who had 3 servants. He called them to him, and he gave one servant 1 talent, another one 3, and another one 5. And the master went about and did his business. And the first servant, the 5 talents, he took it and he invested, and he made 5 more. The 3 talents invested and made 3 more. The one with the 1 talent didn't invest it. He invested it, but he invested it in the earth, in the world. And so when the master finally comes home, the 5 talents, 5, oh, good. 3, oh, good. The one with the 1 goes, no, I didn't invest in the things that I should have. I invested in the world. I invested in this earthly system. And it came up that, he was stripped of what he had. It was cast out. But the point I wanted to make was that even the one who had the 1 talent, who didn't invest appropriately, knew there was an expectation on his life of his service. And because of the talent that he had was not something he just created. It was put in his hand by the master. And so here you are with these talents and abilities that God has put in you, even in your quasi-mistaken discovery of, I like film. But yet it was something God had put in you. And now here we find ourselves using these gifts and talents for the Lord. So even in all that road that kind of went this way and that way, God has you right here using the very gifts and talents he puts in you. So I say praise God for that, and congratulations for being a faithful servant in that regard. So, but I wanted to say to you that as we're going and you're looking at this now, the podcast is happening here. You have the channels that you're doing. You helped me with my previous channel that our brother Eric was helping with, doing Walk Through the Word, and all those things that you've had your hands in and helping. Where do you see this going for you? As God puts it before you and you're thinking about ultimately the picture of eternity, and that everything we do, it only matters as it relates to if it's pleasing to God.
Absolutely.
So where do you see this going, and how do you see yourself evolving?
Man, that is a good question. So our primary channel right now, involves our daughters, and that's only going to last so long.
Right.
I love this style, like the podcast, and I know it's a very popular thing right now. But on YouTube, everything kind of has its moment in the light. It's
right.
like trends on YouTube kind of ebb and flow, and so part of the life of being a YouTuber is recognizing those trends. Luckily, I have a brother-in-law who's really good at recognizing those trends. But I don't know. People ask me, well, what's next? How long is this going to last? And I'm like, you know what? I don't know. At this point, like, we're just trusting God. I don't know where it's going to go. I would love to continue. Like I said, this podcast in particular, I hope that we can just continue this. I think I think it's the reason I thought of it, Brother Eric, you mentioned, right. He said something about a podcast one time, and my mind just kind of went ding, like God was just like, here's an idea. Right. It just seems to me like a perfect fit for your personality, and a great opportunity to just, have discussions about everyday things or whatever, and just have a discussion, have a conversation. And of course, it should always be brought back to God, because right. That's just what life is. We are Christians. I'm not a YouTuber who happens to be a Christian. I'm right. a Christian who happens to be a YouTuber.
Right.
And so everything, of course, in our lives should be, our foundation should always be Christ.
To glorify God, yes.
But like I said, so this just seems like a perfect fit for you, and a fit, it was... honestly, it's kind of a fun project for me, because, the making the same kind of videos all the time gets a little monotonous. So it's fun to throw in something different. Maybe potentially start another podcast. I don't know. I just don't know, but I definitely want to be open. And I could also potentially move away from YouTube. There's a lot of video opportunities and stuff. Right, and so, right. I definitely want to just stay open to what God wants me to do.
And think about this in the sense of investment. Okay. So we talked about the 1, the 3, and the 5, and investing for the purpose of glorifying God. So we come back to this, and I see you set up all this stuff.
you help too.
And I don't. I carry bags. Okay, that's what I do. But I try to carry them with dignity, though. So I do my best. But this is an investment. Even this morning, as you're talking about learning how to enhance audio and things like that. That represents a huge investment. So talk a little bit about that learning curve and how you went from, okay, I'm going to make a superhero video with a cell phone to where you are now with the setup that you have going. Talk about that investment and how you're constantly having to grow in that regard. And what does that look like?
Okay. So yeah, I mean, there's been a huge learning curve. So, okay. Yeah. I say I went to college for film and I got a basic understanding of a lot of things.
Okay.
And I wouldn't think, if you were to talk to me back when I was in college, that you're learning all this stuff now, but in 8-9 years, you're going to start doing YouTube. And when you start doing YouTube, because you think of YouTube as like, okay, some guys out, like there's a channel called Dude Perfect. They started behind their house shooting trick shots, probably shot on like a phone or a real basic camera. That's what you think of as YouTube. But, if you were to tell me as you do YouTube, for now about 3.5 years, you're going to learn far more than you have in college. Now, college gave me an amazing like foundation, a lot of knowledge, not just on like editing and filming basics and like even storytelling, which have been absolutely essential for the stuff that I do. But as far as like, learn, like you were saying, learning and investing in these different things, I've learned so much over the last 3.5 years.
Even your editing has gotten better. I've watched that you edit your own shows and then into these, how that learn, I can see the learning still happening there. And so all these things that, the average person, myself included, will look at a show, and, oh, that's a good show. But for the technician behind the scene, this is the part that people don't see.
Okay, so I'll talk about specifically for this show. So over the last 3.5 years, I have learned a lot about editing. A lot of that's, it's all just like, I'll go on and be like, okay, how do I do this? Go look up a YouTube video or whatever and learn it. But for this show specifically, excuse me.
Equipment.
Yeah.
Choices.
So the show is so different from anything else I've ever done. And so that going into it's fun for me. It's like, okay, I get to learn how to do this. So, these microphones, I've never used the microphones I've used. I just stick on my camera and plug it in and good to go. So I had to figure out how to record with these microphones.
Right.
I had to figure out how to record long format with cameras, and just how to make it all work. And so like, each camera is plugged into a computer, the microphones are plugged in the computer and they're recording, and we've definitely had technical issues, and there's, probably a better way to do it, but I had to just figure out how to make it work.
I mean, even simple concepts. I say simple concepts because I'm speaking from the position of ignorance. Lighting. I mean, all these things.
The lighting is one of those foundational things, that I learned in college that, this, what we're using isn't necessarily like a traditional setup, but kind of those fundamentals of lighting, that I learned in college have definitely carried through even to the, the simple, silly YouTube videos I make now. Lighting is something that I kind of focus on, because if you think about anytime you're watching a video or anything, everything you're looking at is shaped by the light. That's
I can feel a sermon coming on.
Right. And so, there's a lot of learning. I mean, it's constantly, I wouldn't have to, we could just keep doing the same thing and not change anything, but just, I like the whole process of, learning how to do special effects and After Effects. And the stuff I do is very, very basic, but it's still, I try to learn more all the time and do more. And
so how many hours a day on a given edit? Are you sitting editing? Okay, the fun part, the filming, this part right here is interactive. We're laughing, we're talking. And I imagine editing is like when I'm writing. I can laugh and talk with you. We can talk about characters and settings and ideas. But when it comes down to the business of writing, it's a very solitary thing. And I'm by myself with my characters. To be, yeah. So now when you're editing, I imagine that's the same way for you. You really do have to be kind of locked into that. So how many hours are we talking about would you spend, maybe I'm being presumptive, but let me say For a show that lasts, our shows here have been lasting roughly 35, 40 minutes on average. How many minutes of editing is involved to get a 35, 40-minute show air ready?
So these are different. The podcasts are different because they're pretty simple. So basically, like, you have a timeline, and I have like the video of you and the video of me or Jordana, or whoever you're talking to, and I basically just lay them on top of each other. I sync up the videos and the audio files, and then all I have to do for those is I'm simply just cutting back and forth between you and the other person. So a lot of the editing for the podcast so far, I've just kind of done intermittently. So I don't know really how long that takes. Definitely a few hours though. I mean, I'd say no less than probably 3 hours of editing. But then you look at something like one of the other videos I do, which is more, like a narrative style.
Right.
I do some special, like I said, simple, but special effects, which are just a little more time consuming. And depending on the complexity of, the stuff, and our videos typically lately have been like 6 to 7 minutes. And that could be anywhere from like a day or two of editing
for a 6-minute show.
Yeah.
See, that's the investment I'm talking about. You see, so a 6-minute show that someone turns on and clicks on and goes, "Oh, I watched this. Oh, good." We're talking about an 8, 10, 12 hour, 14-hour investment of self and time.
Yeah,
and to bring that out, and I think that's what most people lose or they miss in this whole process of what this question of life is supposed to be, of conveying information, whether it's entertainment oriented or educational oriented or just to have a discussion. The consumer side of it is so simple.
Definitely.
And yet, I'm looking at it because I watch you and we go in here and then I'll say something and there's fact checking that you do to make sure that I'm not saying something wrong, or you'll give some clue on screen of what we're talking about, and all those things happen so seamlessly. And even with my being a part of your production team, a lot of those things happen, and I watch them, and they just go as automatic. I just start to just go, it just happened. And like today,
which really is that's a huge compliment to me as an editor, because if these things happen and it's just seamless and you don't notice, that's fantastic. Like, that makes me really happy, because if something happens and it's just like, and you notice it, then it's like, oh shoot, like, I did a bad job. That reminds me, actually, we were watching one of our videos showing some friends, and he asked me, oh, is that all just one take? Do you just shoot that all? And I'm like, oh, no. I'm like, every shot is different. But the fact that he asked me that told me it was pretty seamless. And again, that was just a really big compliment to me. Like, I was like, okay, cool. Like, it's flowing well. So that's a really big, and I appreciate it.
I watched our first video 3 times before I paid attention to the fact that you put the graphics of the books up because they were part of the conversation. And so I was talking, and my daughter said, "Hey, that was a really good job he did." I said, "What are you talking about?" And so I went back. I'm like, I watched it 3 times. I saw it pop up, referenced it, talked about it, but it did not stand out to me as being something that was like, oh, look at this. Even though I saw it and it just flowed along with what we were talking about. So it enhanced the conversation. But the idea that, wow, I'm just thinking, that was so well done. And I had people contact me online asking me for those books, and so I've been sending them information.
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Oh, I forgot to tell you. Can you tell me those books again? How do I find them? So I send them links on where they can find or get the books, and some of them are liverbox.
That's a good point, though. If you talk about stuff, I should put links to it.
All those things so far has just been pretty dynamic. And just having those conversations have been really have been, to me, a thing that it's been. I don't know. It's just been so good because it extends the conversation. As I said to you earlier, we had an impromptu conversation with my daughter and I, and a vast audience of people that lasted for 4.5 hours. Just an online conversation going back and forth, through IM. And so again, I was like, wow, this is all happening because of what we've been able to do, to express that thought, to engage people in conversation.
And that was exactly my goal when I thought of the podcast. I'm like, you know what? It's going to be, because your other videos on this channel, I think all the other videos are the walk through the word. And, that's a great platform for you to be able to, kind of be like, okay, here's a message from the word, a message from God. And it's just a quick little message. And my thinking behind this podcast is that it's a great opportunity for two people to discuss something, and maybe someone who's looking for information about a specific topic or whatever, to get a little bit more information, dive a little bit deeper into a subject, and just open up that door for conversation.
And that's what happened last night as we were talking. We were able to say, okay, this is the topic we're talking about. As Christians, this is why we say what we say. So it's not about me trying to convince you that I'm right, but it's to convince you or show you what God has said about it. And like everyone, then you have to come to that choice of whether or not you're going to be obedient to what God has said about it. So it's not about my trying to convince you, because I think that the majority of people that I meet and talk to, very few people make belief choices based on logic.
That's true.
Yeah, their belief systems are based on emotion. Mm-hmm. And so when you're talking to people, I have found it very useful, especially when I'm talking online, because you're using the written medium, which is so powerful, because you have the exactness of words.
Right.
And so is to direct them back to the Word of God. The Word of God says, Jesus said, God says. So when you do those kinds of things, it kind of narrows that scope back, that you can sometimes get lost in conversation. Because here we start talking about, for instance, the color red. And now here start talking about, when I see red, I feel like, anger or sunsets. And now I'm talking about, remember that one time we had that vacation, that great sunset, and we forgot what we were talking about over here. But when you have that written medium, it restrains that. It brings it back to that point. And so when we are able to generate those follow-up conversations on our topics, to me, that is very beneficial. I mean, I've had several conversations now on topics from homosexuality to marriage to politics to abortion, where people have been able to have this conversation. And I just simply say to them, this is what the Word of God says. And now when you're talking about my perspective as a Christian, now I have the obligation to be conformed to God. Mm-hmm. Now, the question I have to ask you is in this conversation, not you particularly, but to the person we're talking to online, is that would be, and the same thing that Jesus asked his disciples, who do you say Jesus is? Because once you answer that question, then that's going to determine the rest of it. So if I come to you as a videographer or YouTuber, whatever the proper word is, and I have to ask you, who do you say Jesus is? And depending on how you answer that question will tell me what I expect to see as a fruit of your life. What's going to be the investment of that life? And so, because that then overrides everything else. And so here we are now. We've come from Afghanistan. We've gone to college, and we've been Army troopers, lamenting and sad because we didn't get to be a Marine. We've gone through all of that, and how long were you in counseling to get over that? Well, it's a different story. Well, not everybody can be a Marine. It's okay. So we come through that.
I don't even know what to say back to you. I can't. Okay.
We got out of uniform. We got back in the uniform.
I will readily admit that the Marines were probably far tougher. Okay, let me tell you something about the Army. When I joined in 2007, and okay, so I get there to basic training. The first week was the worst because it was all in processing, and we're just sitting around waiting, and I was not expecting that. I thought I was going to get there. It was going to be like a movie. I was going to be getting yelled at. That's what I wanted. And granted, I went in after college, so I was like 21, 22.
Right.
And I was going in with a lot of pretty young kids, some older ones too, and so I get there, and it's just this waiting around, and I'm like, this is awful. So at the end of that week, then we find, okay, we're done. Now we're actually really starting basic training, and we have our duffel bags and another bag, and then all these drill sergeants walk up, and they just start yelling at us and go. And in my head, I'm like, yes, this is what it's supposed to be like. But what I say is, by and large, basic training wasn't that hard. I really think they have, and I don't even know what it's like now, but this was 2007. It's just so it's just so like remember, you're training people for war, and I feel like it's become a lot softer And it was just, I don't know.
That's a whole different conversation.
Oh, I know. Yeah. Anyway, so where were you going? I don't even remember.
No,
we're
just saying that we're here at this point now. We got out of uniform, i.e. out of the Army, got back in uniform with local sheriff's department, and we become a YouTuber. And now all of a sudden we have this great platform to use. And then you came to me with this idea of doing the podcast, and here we are today, and 5 or 6 shows in at this time, and able to have this great conversation with people around the world. And so I appreciate that you are now using the fruit of your life for this purpose. And so as I think about your girls getting bigger and perhaps moving away from that medium, and you and Amber growing up as ministers in this, and all the opportunities that's available, I'm really just excited to see where God's going to take you.
I am too, honestly. Like,
it's going to look like
that's something that I've thought and prayed a lot about, and I'm I think Amber has too. Just like where, like how, like God, how can we use this strange world of YouTube? Because it's a strange world. Like it's getting so big. Yeah. If you talk to a lot of like kids right now, they don't want to watch TV. They don't want to watch movies. They want to watch YouTube. Like period. Like that's what they want to watch.
They're online. They're online.
Yeah, they're online. Anyway, so it's just like, and when we first started, we were just doing these dumb like superhero videos, and it was a blessing. It allowed us to be able to do this, so it's great. But there wasn't a lot of fulfillment there. It's like, okay, they're just silly entertainment videos with like no worth beyond those 3 minutes of watching that video. You know what I mean? And so Amber actually had the idea for the videos we're currently doing, which we're able to.
Yeah, some of those are give the audience, because what are those shows called?
Twins and Toys.
Twins and Toys, and do you still do Princess Lollipop?
We're gonna start again.
That was one of my favorites.
As soon as the studio's ready, I think we'll get to doing that again. Right now, our all of our filming, everything is packed into the room where we did the Princess Lollipop filming, and it's just. I
tell you guys,
and I'm hiring
Twins and Toys. Check it out, and go back and find the old ones on Princess Lollipop, because you will be blessed. They're so good. They're so good. Just saying. Watch it there, camera.
But yeah, so Amber had this idea of what we're currently doing on Twins and Toys, and we're able to put in a good moral and a good lesson and bring it back to God. And we don't always every episode or anything. We still have those silly fun episodes, and for me it's really important to just make sure the girls are always having fun, because we never want to force them to film. But it was awesome the other day, actually. One of my daughters, she's like, Dad, I really want to film. Like, we hadn't filmed in a couple of weeks, so we just kind of had a break. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. Like they like
they got the bug.
Yeah, they like doing the videos, and I never want it to be a burden for them, because for them it's just a fun thing. Like,
they're just playing. Yeah,
it's just playing, and it's really fun. But and so I believe God gave Amber this idea for the stuff we're currently doing, and that's
this was the Great King thing.
Yes.
Phenomenal.
And so that for me personally has allowed me to, we can do a lot more with story and having more meaningful videos.
That's really been
and now we're like working in our own characters, and it's just fun, but we always want to be open to like, okay, God, how can we use this platform and what, the equipment we have and all the knowledge I have at this point, and just continue leading us. And so I definitely think this podcast is that next step, and
all for His glory.
Yeah. Awesome.
It made me think of, because you said, I asked you at one point, I didn't know, you said you was in college, I didn't know this was going to be doing it. And that's the beauty of it, is that we don't have to know, but we know that the God we serve does. And we don't know what this thread is going to develop into. Our job is just to be faithful and obedient on this thread, so that in 8 years from now, who knows what God will be using, if we're still here. But the idea being that whatever those talents are that's in us, is to use it for the kingdom. So we're actually over our time limit. So I'm going to say thank you for allowing me to be your partner in this, and thank you again for letting me interview you. But really, thank you for being obedient to that prompting from the Spirit of God, to come out and invest in the time and the effort it takes to do all these things, because I see it making a difference. And thank you, and God bless you. And so for all you guys out there, hey, again, thank you for joining us again. Remember to like and subscribe. Help us get this conversation started so we can talk to you and people around the world about what God's doing. Until next time, peace. Love you.